If a man is truly interested in you, he will not rush to confess it. He will start by studying you through two simple questions most women completely overlook. And the strange part is, these questions don't sound romantic at all, but they quietly decide whether he moves closer to you or slowly pulls away. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever talked to someone who seemed interested at first, but then suddenly became distant without any clear reason? Or someone who kept asking you simple, almost casual questions, but the conversation felt deeper than normal small talk? That is not random. There is a pattern behind it. And once you understand it, you stop second-guessing people and start seeing intentions more clearly. Why most women think a man who likes her will just say it comes from a very simple assumption about how attraction is supposed to work. In reality, it rarely works like that. Not with a man who actually feels something deeper. Not with a man who looks at a woman and senses something real inside him. Those men do not rush forward and declare everything loudly. They do not enter with obvious confidence or dramatic gestures. Instead, they slow down. They become more careful, more observant, and more quiet. And this is where most women misunderstand the situation completely. They interpret that quietness as lack of interest. They assume they got it wrong, so they pull back emotionally. And in that moment, the man who was slowly starting to feel something real just sees distance appear, and the chance quietly disappears before it ever had space to grow. This is the mistake that happens far more often than people realize, and it affects even intelligent, self-aware women. Not because they are doing anything wrong, but because nobody ever clearly explained what emotional behavior actually looks like when a man is genuinely drawn to a woman. Movies make it look simple and direct, like everything should be obvious from the start. But real attraction in real life is more controlled, more internal, and much less expressive at the beginning. A man who truly feels something does not immediately show all his cards. Instead, he studies the situation quietly, trying to understand what he is feeling and whether it is safe to move forward. That silence is not absence of interest. It is the beginning stage of something forming slowly. When a man is genuinely attracted to a woman and begins to sense that she might be someone meaningful in his life, he does not behave in a loud or obvious way. Instead, he starts asking himself questions internally. And that internal process naturally comes out through the way he speaks to her. He slows his pace. He becomes more thoughtful in conversation. He listens more than he speaks. And most importantly, he starts asking things that are not just casual small talk. Curious. These are not random questions. They are quiet attempts to understand her world, her personality, and whether there is something real beneath the surface interaction they are having. Most women do not realize that men use conversation as a way of testing emotional safety. On the surface, it looks like normal chatting, but underneath it, there is a quiet evaluation happening. A man who is not interested will keep everything light, simple, and forgettable. But a man who is genuinely drawn to a woman starts adding weight to the conversation without even realizing it. He asks things that reveal how she lives, what she values, and how she experiences life when she is not performing for anyone. And if a woman only responds at surface level, she often misses the emotional signal entirely. She thinks nothing important happened, while in reality, something very important just passed through the conversation. But before understanding those specific questions, there is something important to understand about men that changes everything about how their behavior is interpreted. Men are far more cautious with their emotions than they appear on the outside. This is not because they are cold or emotionally unavailable by nature. It is because experience teaches them to be careful. Many men have learned through past situations that moving too quickly emotionally can lead to disappointment or embarrassment. They may have shown interest too early, trusted too fast, or invested in someone who was not on the same level of emotional seriousness. After that, they learn to slow down and observe before they invest anything deeper. So when a man is sitting in front of a woman he actually finds attractive in a meaningful way, he does not let the feeling control him immediately. Instead, he becomes more aware of everything around him. He pays attention to how she speaks, how she reacts, how she carries herself when she is not trying too hard. He is not simply asking whether she is attractive, because that question is already answered for him. What he is really trying to figure out is whether she is someone he can trust with his attention, his emotions, and possibly something real that could grow over time if handled carefully. This is where most misunderstandings begin. Women often focus on obvious signals like texting speed, eye contact, or how close he sits. These things matter, but they are only the surface layer. The real indicators are hidden in the way he structures his questions. A man who is not genuinely interested will not dig deeper. He will stay in safe territory and avoid emotional depth completely. But a man who is drawn in begins to explore more subtle layers of conversation. He asks questions that feel slightly more personal than expected for the stage of interaction they are in, and that shift is where the real meaning starts to show. Another important point is that seriousness in a man does not always look like boldness. Many women expect confidence to look direct and expressive, but real emotional investment often looks quieter than that. A man who does not care about the outcome can be loud, playful, and overly forward because there is nothing at stake for him emotionally. But a man who actually cares becomes more measured. He does not want to misread things. He does not want to move too fast and ruin something that feels meaningful to him. So instead of rushing, he studies, listens, and asks questions that help him understand who she really is beneath the surface interaction. And this is exactly why silence or calm behavior is so often misunderstood. When a woman does not know this pattern, she may interpret his slower energy as disinterest. She may think he is not engaging enough or not emotionally present, so she withdraws. But from his side, that withdrawal feels like confirmation that he was right to be careful in the first place. And just like that, two people who might have connected on a deeper level miss each other completely without ever realizing what actually happened between them in those small, early interactions. This is why understanding the way these two questions appear in conversation matters so much. Not because they are tricks or techniques, but because they reveal intent. They show when a man is moving from surface-level interaction into real curiosity about who you are. Once you can recognize that shift, you stop overthinking everything else. You stop guessing based on mixed signals and start noticing what is actually being communicated in the conversation itself, especially when things begin to feel slightly more thoughtful or intentional than normal small talk. The first question usually appears in a very simple form, which is why it is so easy to miss. It might sound like he is just asking about your routine or your free time, something like what you do when you are not working, or what your day usually looks like, or what you enjoy doing in general. Sometimes it is even more casual, like asking what you did over the weekend, or how you usually spend your time when you are not busy. On the surface, it feels like normal conversation, but underneath it, there is a deeper purpose forming quietly. What he is really doing is trying to understand your world beyond the interaction between you two. He is not just collecting information about your schedule. He is trying to feel what your life is like when no one is watching. He wants to know what naturally fills your time, what brings you comfort, what excites you, and whether there is depth and structure in your everyday life that exists independently of him or any relationship. Because to him, that tells him something very important about who you are as a person. They say, oh, I don't know, not much, just work mostly. Or they go in the completely opposite direction and start listing things in a way that feels like they are trying to impress him. Neither of those actually lands the way they think it does. The first version makes her seem like she doesn't really have much going on in her life, like there is not much depth or movement there. The second version makes her sound like she is performing, like she is trying to prove something or pass a silent test. And both of those extremes miss the point completely. What actually works is something in between. Something that sounds natural, relaxed, and real. Something that feels like she is already living her life, not trying to create one just for the moment of being noticed. It might sound simple, but it carries a very different energy. For example, honestly, I've been really into cooking lately, like actually learning how to do it properly, not just throwing things together. Or she might say, I've been spending a lot of time with my friends lately. We started this thing on weekends where we try a new place every week, and it kind of became our routine. Or even something like, I've been reading a lot more recently, and I forgot how much I actually enjoy it. These are not big statements. They are not designed to impress anyone, but that is exactly why they work. They sound real. They sound lived in. They sound like a person who is already engaged in her own world. It does not need to be impressive at all. It just needs to be honest. It needs to feel like there is an actual life behind the words, not a pause where life is supposed to start later when the right person shows up. Because the moment he hears that kind of answer, something subtle shifts in how he perceives her. She becomes more interesting without trying to be. Not because she is doing more, but because she already is something. She is already participating in her own life instead of waiting for life to begin through someone else. That energy is what changes the way she is experienced in that moment. And there is another layer to this that most people do not think about. The way she answers also tells him something about how she would show up in a relationship. A woman who already has her own rhythm, her own interests, and her own sense of identity is not someone who collapses her entire world into a man the moment something begins. She is not someone who loses herself easily or turns the relationship into her only source of meaning. She brings her own structure with her. She stays grounded in herself. And for a man who is thinking beyond something casual, that stability is not just attractive, it is necessary. So when he asks about your life, the answer should not be reduced or exaggerated. It should not be shaped to create a reaction. It should simply reflect reality in a calm and open way. Because what is actually attractive is not the content alone. It is the presence behind it. It is the sense that she is already living, already moving, already engaged with her own world. And that kind of energy does not need to be decorated. It speaks for itself when it is simply allowed to show up. Now, what usually happens next is important. If your answer carries that sense of real life in it, if it feels natural and grounded, the interaction does not stay at the same level. It starts to shift. The man does not always even realize it consciously, but his curiosity increases. He leans in more emotionally, even if his body language stays the same. The conversation becomes less about filling space and more about understanding. The small, automatic back and forth starts to fade slightly, and something more intentional begins to appear underneath it. And that is usually the point where a second kind of question starts to show up. Not because it is planned, but because the conversation naturally deepens. This second question is even more subtle, and most women do not recognize its importance at first because it still sounds casual on the surface. But the purpose behind it is much more focused. It is no longer just about who she is right now, but about where she is heading and how she sees her own life unfolding. What he is really trying to figure out is whether there is space for him in the direction she is already moving toward. Not in a controlling way, not in a forced way, but in a natural compatibility sense. He is asking himself if her life and his life could realistically move alongside each other without one person losing themselves. He wants to know if she has awareness of where she is going, or if she is simply drifting without much thought about it. Because those two states create very different dynamics in connection. A man who is serious about something real does not feel comfortable with complete uncertainty. Not because he wants control, but because emotional investment needs direction to feel safe. If a woman has no sense of what she wants or where she is going, it creates instability in how he sees the connection. But if she is clear, even gently clear about her direction in life, it creates a sense of grounding. It feels like something that can actually grow instead of something that floats without shape. And this is where many women accidentally create confusion without meaning to. Some respond too intensely, like they are giving a final statement about commitment or seriousness. That creates pressure in a moment that is still supposed to feel natural. Others go too vague and say things like they are just going with the flow, which removes clarity completely. Both responses miss the middle ground where honesty and ease meet. The middle response is not about perfection, it is about balance. Something like, honestly, I am in a good place right now. I know what I want overall, but I am not rushing anything. I am open to something real if it feels right. That kind of answer does something important. It shows direction without pressure. It shows openness without desperation. It shows self-awareness without closing the door. And that combination creates comfort in the interaction instead of tension. Or she might say something like, right now, I am focused on building my own life, my work, and things that matter to me. But I also believe that the right connection would just feel natural if it comes. Again, there is no performance in it. There is no effort to control the outcome. It simply reflects a woman who is moving forward in her own life while remaining open to connection if it aligns naturally. When a man hears that kind of clarity, something in his perception of her shifts. She stops being someone he is simply talking to and becomes someone he starts considering more seriously. Not because she changed who she is, but because she revealed stability in who she already is. And stability creates interest in a very different way than excitement alone. In the end, all of this comes down to something very simple that is often missed. Human connection does not usually depend on big moments or perfect words. It is built quietly, through small conversations, honest expressions, and the way two people naturally understand each other over time. When a man asks about your life or your direction, it is not about pressure or performance. It is simply part of how people try to understand compatibility and comfort. And when you respond, the most important thing is not to try to create an image, but to stay close to what is real for you. A life that is already being lived will always feel more grounded than a life that is being shaped for approval. Clarity about yourself, combined with ease in how you speak about it, naturally creates a stronger and more stable impression than anything forced or exaggerated. At the same time, no single question decides anything on its own. Real connection is not built in moments of analysis, but in consistent interaction where both people feel understood, respected, and comfortable being themselves. So the key takeaway is simple. Be aware, be honest, and stay natural in how you communicate. Let conversations unfold without pressure or overthinking, because when things are real, they do not need to be performed. They just need to be lived and expressed as they are.